Due to the graphic nature of this program, viewer discretion is advised.
It's Peyton! We'll make her one of us. A loving cup. We accept her one of us. Google gobble. We accept her. Google gobble. One of us. Google gobble. They're going to make you one of them, my peacock. Google gobble.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Viewer Discretion Advised podcast. Oh boy, if you can't already tell from that hiccup, I am kind of drunk right now, and I'm going to attempt to do this podcast anyways. So, yeah. Listen, this is, I watched a movie called Freaks, which came out in 1932. And I watched it with a good friend of mine named Emily. What's your last name? Cole. Anyways, we're both really drunk right now, but we watched a movie called Freaks.
Because we are freaks.
And Freaks is a movie that came out in 1932. God damn, I don't know how I'm going to fucking get through this shit right now.
You're going to get through it painfully, but you will.
You will. Let me just pull up the Wikipedia page. You know what? This is how I expected it to go, honestly.
I mean, I didn't know how, but this is unexpected,
This is really,
and I fucking love
in the
it.
beginning of the day, I was like, we're going to get drunk as shit. And we're going to try and do a podcast, and it's going to sound awful. Whatever.
I know.
We'll plow through.
I know. But, like, the fact that we ate so much before we watched the movie. Like, we dove into so much fucking food before we
Can you
got into the
describe
movie.
the food that we had?
All right. So we ordered from and then picked up from Bull and Bear Roadhouse. We got these fucking appetizer things.
They were these, like, corn fritters.
Thank you.
They were, oh my God, who's going to listen to this? We had corn fritters.
Wrapped in bacon.
They were jalapeno corn fritters wrapped in bacon. And they were pretty delicious. Along with that, I think you had a pulled pork sandwich.
Oh my God. The best. So, my pulled pork sandwich, it was really good. It had pulled pork.
It had pulled pork on it.
Obviously, it had pulled pork. But
And I had a smoked brisket sandwich.
no, let me finish.
All right.
Let me finish.
Jesus Christ. We're like 4 minutes into this podcast. Ow. It's in my head.
Stop that. All right, so this fucking sandwich, it had pulled pork, obviously. It was on this fucking delicious roll. It was pretty soft and warm, and I liked it. And it had coleslaw and a slice of pineapple. The pineapple fucking made it. I swear to God, that pineapple.
The pineapple.
Woo!
The pineapple was on the pulled pork sandwich, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yes, that was really good.
Yeah. What else did you have with it? You had a mac salad.
Yep, I had the mac salad. I don't know what kind of mac salad it was, but it was their mac salad.
It was good. I liked it.
It did. It did.
It did. It did.
I did like it too.
Fuck me right now.
And then I had broccoli with it. I did not like the broccoli. All right, so when we ordered it, we're like, all right, seasonal vegetables, because that was one of the side options. Seasonal vegetables, like, 'tis the season for vegetables right now, right? It's harvest season.
True.
It's fall. It's fucking harvest season. Give me some fucking seasonal vegetables. But they're like, all we got's broccoli. I'm not against broccoli. I love broccoli. Broccoli's great. Yeah, but like they say seasonal vegetables, I expect something more like a squash or I don't know, just something other than broccoli.
Yeah, because broccoli you can kind of have year round. That's not really seasonal.
Exactly. So then like we get back here and we bust open all this fucking amazing food that we just ordered. Everything's looking amazing. And then the broccoli, it's really soft.
You said not only was it soft, but it smelled like feet, I believe.
Yes.
Which broccoli tends to smell like feet.
Yes.
However,
yes.
you said it was... You didn't eat it the whole thing, did you?
No. I mean, like, the entire, like, spread itself definitely did not eat all of it. But, like, the broccoli was definitely one of the things I did not eat as much of.
Anyways, we got really drunk off of... What did we have? White wine? What type of wine was it?
Yeah, we got a bottle of Pinot Grigio, and then we got, I think it was Barefoot champagne, but it was called Pink Bubbles. It wasn't like any sort of fancy champagne, but it was called Pink Bubbles.
I still drank it.
We drank it, yo.
And now we're having... What is this?
We're having... Fireball with apple cider, which is fucking fall staple, bitch.
God, like I could seriously die drinking this because it goes down so easy. This is crazy. All right, let's try to have a podcast right now.
Because that's why we're here, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's just we put all this effort into it. Anyways, you got. Get your vape pens out and let's go. Freaks is a 1932 American pre-code horror film. Do you know what pre-code means, Emily?
Pre-code. I think pre-code is probably like when movies did not have any sort of like guidelines in which they had to go by, like when releasing a film, like in terms maybe of like things that are too offensive or risque or violent or I don't know, but something of that sort maybe.
You are pretty much correct on that.
Oh, cool.
And I'm going to read a little bit off of the Wikipedia page. Oh my God, I've had a stroke.
Oh my God.
Some films in the late 1920s and early 1930s depicted or implied sexual
innuendos.
Sexual innuendos. Miscegenation? What is that?
Miscegenation? Like abuse against women. Like misogyny.
Oh, that thing.
Yeah.
Mild profanity. What's mild? Illegal drug use. Promiscuity. Ooh. Oh, wow. Prostitution. Infidelity. Abortion.
Coat hangers.
That's the way to do it. Intense violence and homosexuality. So guess who put the kibosh on that?
Yo mama?
No.
Oh,
Close.
man.
Close. American Roman Catholics launched a campaign against what they deemed the immorality of American cinema. It's fucking Catholics, man.
Ruining everything.
They're in bed with the government, and they just ruined everything. So, all right. Let me just get it right into it, right off the topic, right off the bat. What'd you think of this movie? What was your overall impression of this movie? What sort of feelings did you have towards this? And I'm gonna drink while you explain.
Well, I'm going to drink while I explain. So, so, as I've been drinking, I'll now explain. Just kidding. So my impressions on the movie is I find it very fascinating. It's just very interesting to see how people who were maybe born of a different, physical difference of other people, or, maybe mental defect or something.
No, I get what you're saying.
Yeah, but it's just interesting to see like how people like made their
they sort of embraced their own
yes,
whatever their handicap was in life, and instead of taking it as a negative, they looked at it as a positive, and they were like, hey, I am who I am, and oh god, you're so sexy.
But yes, no, that's exactly what I was trying to get at. It's just like, rather than like let this, I don't know, almost like take you down in a time of which like it was like really confusing and unaccepting, like they really embraced it and like used it to their advantage. And
during a time where that wasn't really accepted. I mean, not
at all.
Like the pinheads in this movie that were,
yeah,
they're classified as mentally retarded.
Mm-hmm.
They would be put away. You know what I mean? They'd be put away in a home or an institution. And Todd Browning, the guy who directed this movie, was like, no, because he had a background in vaudeville and the circus, and he understood their importance, and he looked at them as like they're not quote unquote freaks, as the movie suggests. They're human beings.
They are still people. Exactly. Yeah. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah. I will say
they were depicted as children, however. They were, like, even though like they appear to be adults, the madam that, the caretaker of them was still like, these are my children. So almost in a sense I can see like maybe how some people saw that as them being looked down as inferiors as some sort, because still like these are my children, even though they are, clearly what I think are to be adults, but
absolutely
also like characterized down to be appearing as children. If that makes any sense.
No, yeah. I mean, treated as children as such,
Yes.
treated as kind of,
Which I get, but also just in the film, just,
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's what we're talking about. More of this.
More liquor. So the original version of this film, which you know about,
Yes.
it had a running time of 90 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And was considered too shocking to be released. So several scenes were cut, resulting in an abridged runtime of 64 minutes.
Yep.
And the original version no longer exists.
Which is kind of unfortunate. Like it's
very sad.
It seems like it would be really, I don't know.
It's part of history.
Exactly. Just like really fascinating, kind of interesting footage to see.
So the film is based on elements of a short story called Spurs. Do you know anything about Spurs, Emily?
I read a little bit about like the premise of it. I know it's a short story that's based on well, it's what the movie is based off of, obviously, and as we're discussing,
Obviously. I didn't bring it up for no reason.
My
Hey,
ass.
Emily, just to get off topic, but do you know what the short story Spurs is about?
So my ass. Sorry. I'm gonna get with it. I'm gonna get with
That's
it.
fine.
So.
You do you. You take your time.
But okay, so there is this it's this like circus act. And there is this woman who is kind of like Cleopatra in the movie. But she is a bareback horse rider. I believe is what it is.
Right.
Yep. And so she ends up like befriending and kind of like romanticize or getting in a romantic relationship with this dwarf that's in the circus as well, and finds out he's worth,
He's pretty well off.
Exactly. Yes. Oh yeah. Really well
He's
off.
got
But
money.
yeah, he's got money, but he's not well off otherwise.
And I don't. Yeah, exactly. So she tries to get involved with this dwarf who's he has a lot of money, but she's seeing another guy on the side. This is basically how the short story goes.
Mhm.
And
Right.
she goes to the guy's house, not the dwarf, but the full grown man who they're into each other. They're into each other, and they're basically scheming against this dwarf.
He is another performer in an act that she's involved in, I believe is what it is.
That's right. He plays
Yes.
Hercules.
Yes.
He's Hercules, who's the
Yes.
strongest man
Exactly.
ever.
Yep.
Yeah.
Which is also like same in the movie as it is in the story. So it's like
Right.
it's a strong man character in the movie and strong man character in the short story too.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, that's the one thing that carried over in this.
Yes.
So basically, how that story ends. Do you know how that story ends?
Pretty drastically from what I remember.
So the woman and the guy are together, and they're at the guy's house, and this dwarf comes in riding on a wolf, wielding a sword, and he fucking comes after the guy, and the guy can't defend himself, and he just fucking succumbs to his, to either getting killed by the wolf or the sword or both. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And one key point I wanted to make out. I'm drunk as shit, but I can still remember some stuff.
Good for you. Most people couldn't.
Yeah. At their wedding reception, she says something to the effect of, I could carry him all across France on my back. That's how the story. And so the dwarf kind of puts that in his head of like, oh, okay. Like, she said that, maybe she can. Cut to the guy getting killed by the wolf and the sword, and she basically has to succumb to what she said in the beginning, where she was like, I could carry this dwarf that I don't really care about. I just want for him for my money, or for his money to I could carry him across France on my back.
Right.
And he goes, all right, bitch, let's see what you can do here. He fucking killed her man and was like, carry me on your back across France. And that's how that fucking story ends, right? And it's kind of grim, but it's beautiful. It's justified because it's like, yeah, fuck this bitch, for using him. Good addition.
Thanks.
So anyways, Todd Browning, the director of this movie, who directed Dracula.
Right before this movie.
Exactly.
Right before.
So Dracula is a classic, and this movie's kind of a classic in its own sense.
Definitely in its own sense, very own sense.
Yeah.
Definitely like its own like subgenre in its own sense, you know?
It's funny you mention that because I'm reading here. It says Freaks has been described as standing alone in a subgenre of one. So
I mean,
it's true because
yeah.
what other movie can you think of that has actual like people with deformities being kind of whatever you want to say, exploited or you know,
it's
used in
being
film?
depicted like in its real sense almost, you know, like in a fictional sense, but almost as real as it maybe could get, you know, without being like a biographical or documentary kind of thing.
Right, exactly. So yeah, basically, I mean, going back to what we were saying, nobody preserved film back in the day, and so the unedited version is completely lost, which makes me sad. But
Yeah, it's definitely a bit of a bummer. Like, especially when it's this kind of a film, like it's really kind of an original almost, like, or at least one of the originals that has been managed to remain preserved in some sense.
and I think is still relevant. You can look at it now
Yes.
and still be like, you could still get something from this movie.
Yeah, absolutely. Like just the feeling of maybe being an outsider of sorts, like it
Yeah.
if you want to look at it in like some sort of like a narrower depth sense.
It's basically,
You know,
people
that
who
sounded weird, but
no, it's
Yeah.
right.
okay.
People who feel different in society. In this movie, all those different people, all those oddities, they get their revenge. You know,
Yeah.
they come back and they fight against people who are using them and are making fun of them. So I don't look at this as like an exploitation film. I look at it as more as just like accepting of any human being, you know?
Almost, yeah, and like in a sense of like empowerment almost, like
Exactly. And
recognizing like the differences we have and embracing that and being like, this is what I have and what.
and you get the sense too that like everybody in this movie kind of felt that way. Like all the quote unquote freaks in this movie, they seem like they're having a good time. They seem like they're enjoying themselves. They don't seem like they're being used or manipulated or any way or doing something against their will, which we'll kind of get into a little bit more here. God damn it. I wish I could stop hiccuping right now.
Fuck you and your hiccups.
Yeah. But basically, how would you describe the premise of this movie? It's basically it's taken directly from that short story of just a dwarf who in this movie he looks so much like a little kid. It was freaking me out a little bit.
It's like the first few times that I've seen it, like prior to tonight, like I've seen this movie I think maybe at least 4 times, like 3 or 4 times I think. But like that part like always kind of like, for lack of a better term, like not weirded me out, but like just intrigued me, I guess, because like as I mentioned like before, like there was a scene in the movie where it showed like 2 different kinds of dwarfs, like one next to one, one beside the other, like where it showed like 2 different kinds of like dwarfism, like where it just shows like the I don't know, the broad spectrum in which, this affects people, I guess. Like, I don't really know how else to describe it, but like
basically I think the way that I can describe it is like there's certain dwarfs where when you see them, you can immediately point to them and be like, that's a dwarf. Like you can tell right away. The protagonist in this movie, you look at him and the woman that he's involved with, who's also a dwarf, who happens to be his sister in real life.
In real life, yes.
You look at them and you think, they look like little kids. They look like fucking 6-year-olds, you know?
Yeah.
Dressed up in suits, basically. And there's pictures of them just, they all, and the entire family was all dwarfs, apparently. All his brothers and sisters were all dwarfs.
Yep.
And it was just, yeah, you see pictures of them, like, you know, remodeling a house or something, and you're like, God, that looks like a little kid. That just doesn't look like a dwarf. That looks like a little kid. So
Yep.
it freaks. I think that probably freaked out audiences more so than anything. Was the fact that like this grown, full-size woman was into, quote unquote, into this dwarf who looked like a little boy. But, anyways, the basic plot of this movie kind of follows along the similar lines of that short story of like a woman. She works in a circus and she cozies up to this dwarf, and this dwarf is pretty well off apparently.
Yep, and she learns that he's inheriting something, so
Yep.
she wants a little piece of that action.
Yeah, so she's just going to use him
Yep.
to try to get some of that inheritance.
Mm-hmm.
And she's involved with another guy who plays Hercules in the show.
Mm-hmm.
And they're kind of conspiring. They're co-conspirators against this dwarf.
Yes.
And this dwarf is completely, it's sad to watch because he's like, oh, this person is really into me. And
He's just more so, I think, into the idea of having her be into him, you know, rather than like the whole, rather than like there being.
he's into her more than she's into him. He buys the fact that like she's into him, and he really thinks that like, oh, this could happen, but she's pulling the wool over his eyes and is like, nah, I'm just using you. I'm just being a conniving bitch.
Exactly.
And-
Yes.
And so that's kind of the basic premise of the movie,
Yep.
and it kind of goes from there. But
And it's really sad because it's like he sees it like the whole time, but like he still buys into it because he has that like small like glimpse of hope, it feels like, that I think a lot of people really kind of have in general.
Exactly.
Like
If you're-
even nowadays, like how many years later, like 80 something years later, like people are still holding on to that small glimpse of hope. Like, fuck, I know this bitch is bad for me, or I know this fucking dude is bad for me, whatever. But I'm gonna hold on to that a little bit because I think there's a little something there.
I think this might
Yes.
work. Yeah, and then
You know?
realize at the end of the
Right?
day that like no, and that drives you even into even more of a depression.
Exactly.
Because it's like
It's still relevant. Like all of this shit.
I had
If you think about it, it's still relevant.
it's like I had faith in nothing in the world, but then this person came into my life,
Mm-hmm.
and I had faith in them.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. So to get into a bit of a background here, yeah, as I mentioned, the director, he had a background in vaudeville and working in the circus. So one thing I liked about this movie is they just showed the entire backstage of the circus life. They didn't actually show the circus, which I thought was cool.
Yes.
Because that's what's interesting. Behind the scenes stuff is always what's interesting. It's never about what's out in front. It's always about what people, the interminglings of people behind the scenes, how the dwarf interacts with the bird lady, or another oddity, if you will.
Right.
So I thought, oh, that's awesome. Like a guy with actual experience championed this film. I was like, I want to make this because I know what the fuck I'm talking about, and I'm gonna do this. So let's get into some of the characters, shall we?
Yes.
Oh, fucking God. Just kill me. So among the characters featured as freaks were Peter Robinson, who was known as the Human Skeleton. Do you remember him in that movie?
Yep. He was the one that had the baby with the bearded lady.
That's right.
That's Right.
And he literally was a human skeleton. He
Yeah.
looked like skin over bones.
Did they discuss or disclose as to like what his medical condition was, as to, you know, why he looked the way he did, other than being a human skeleton?
They didn't really.
Okay.
I don't think so.
I mean, obviously he, you know,
It's 1932. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like,
but
and then it goes into to Olga Roderick, who was the bearded lady.
oh, okay, which was his wife in the film.
Yes.
Yep.
Who apparently, according to making this movie, was kind of the only one unhappy on the film.
Oh.
Because in that documentary that we watched the documentary beforehand.
Yes, we did.
She mentioned that, or one of the historians mentioned the fact that, like, she was very outspoken. She was a socialist. She did not like the fact that she was being portrayed in this way as like a freak.
Mm-hmm.
But in the same token, you can look back and go, well, you signed up for it. Like, you agreed to do this. You got paid. So I don't know. It's weird.
I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. But she's barely she's barely featured in this movie. She has like maybe 2 scenes, I think.
Other than the birthing scene, obviously, you know.
Right.
You know, prior to when Skeleton Man's passing out the cigars, you know, with the fellows amongst they're sitting at the circus side rings, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Side rings, that's probably not the correct term.
I bought it.
My drunk ass.
And then there was Frances O'Connor and Martha Morris, who were the armless wonders. They were the ladies without the arms. And there was one scene in this movie where this lady drinks, what is she drinking? Like beer probably, or some sort of wine. And she just drinks it with her foot. She grasps the goblet of wine with her foot, like effortlessly, and just drinks it like it's nothing. Like she's drinking it with her arm. And it's so, I thought, so many moments in this movie, I was like, that is so fucking cool that she can do that. I never looked at any of these people of like, wow, that's weird or that's crazy. I was just like, that's awesome.
It's because she was born like that. Like, that's how she, you know, she wasn't born with any arms. So she adapted her life to using her feet as people would use for their hands, their, you know, their arms.
And it was just second nature to her.
Exactly. So, like, for people to see that on film, like, it was really extraordinarily fascinating to them. At the same time, like, it was really kind of different, like, almost kind of, I guess, like, in nod to the title of the movie, it was almost kind of like freakish to them because they're not used to seeing that. So they see someone doing things with their feet as people would use with their hands, like, you know, it's different. But I think it's really, really cool, and it's really fascinating to see how people adapt. And
it's no big deal to them.
Exactly.
You know?
That's what they are born with. That's what they do. That's what they have. Like, so
yeah. And
it's amazing what the human body is capable of.
Mm-hmm. You can just conform to whatever's going on.
Mm-hmm.
There's the conjoined twins, Daisy and Violet Hilton.
Oh yes, those gals.
Those gals, they were conjoined probably at the hip, I would imagine. And
like most BFFs, but these gals literally
they literally were conjoined at the hip.
Like born at the hip.
Yep. And little fun fact about that, in the documentary that we watched, apparently they were both involved with 2 separate men, and they were trying to get married all across America, and nobody would grant them a marriage license because it just, back then it just seemed fucking crazy. I'm sure even now it would seem crazy to try to do that. But they did eventually get married, both 2 separate men. But they divorced shortly after that, and a lot of people thought that it was kind of a sham, and I don't know. They were very pretty girls. I thought they were ones where it was like, oh man, like if they had just had an operation where they could be separated, I feel like their lives would have been so much easier, you know.
I mean, in terms of the standards of now, yeah, maybe. But yeah, they were both like, I mean, very beautiful women. You know, they were attached to one another, and that's how they live their lives. They were both able to live very full, you know, fulfilling lives.
Yeah, and that's the thing too. Like a lot of these people that were the freaks that were in this movie, they
Quote
actually
unquote
kind of,
freaks, as you just like
yeah,
motioned with your hands. I just wanted to add,
yeah,
as you said, freaks.
Exactly.
So just wanted to add that.
They all seem pretty well off in their life.
Yeah, definitely.
Life, you know, they all seem like they made out okay. It wasn't like they were just completely used and then just tossed in a dumpster or something like that. But all right, well,
they made the best of what they had.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well,
let's get on to the quote unquote pinheads of this movie. Zip and Pip, Elvira and Jenny Lee Snow, and Schlitzie. Schlitzie's pretty famous, you know, among those pinheads.
Schlitzie, if I remember reading upon, like the actual spelling of the name versus the credits in the name are spelled differently.
Okay.
I think that's a weird fact of credit versus actual spelling of Schlitzie in the movie versus real life.
Yeah, well, his real name was Simon Metz. He was a man. He wasn't a woman, which he's kind of portrayed as a woman, but he was a man.
Yep.
But he wore a dress, and he suffered from incontinence, which is why he wore the dress.
Yes.
So he can just kind of pee freely. It's been disputed, but I mean, I don't know. It doesn't seem to make sense. Like, why else would he be wearing a dress and then, you know,
Yeah,
if he has incontinence problems? But that
makes sense.
one interesting thing I wanted to point out about the Pinheads. You're familiar with the band The Ramones, correct?
Sure.
You know the song Pinhead?
Yes.
That's based off of this movie.
Okay, cool.
So, the Ramones song Pinhead was inspired by a screening of the film by the band. It's the source of Gabba Gabba Hey. You know that little catchphrase they have, Gabba Gabba Hey.
Yes.
So it's a catchphrase, and the Ramones, they saw Freaks at an art house cinema on a rare day off when they were at some outdoor event, and the event was canceled due to bad weather. And so they saw this movie Freaks, and that the beginning of the song Pinhead, where they go, Gabba Gabba, we accept you, one of us. Gabba Gabba, we accept you, one of us.
Right, yes.
That's directly from Freaks.
Okay.
Which I didn't know. Yeah.
That's cool.
I just thought that was cool. I'm a huge Ramones fan, and I didn't even know that. Not only that, but from that point on, for the Ramones and their live appearances, whenever they would play that song Pinhead, they would have somebody come out as, you know, wear like a pinhead mask and dance around on the stage. One of which was Eddie Vedder.
Oh, from from the 90s.
From the 90s. That's all you needed to say. From the 90s. From Pearl Jam.
Yeah, exactly.
He donned the mask one time and danced on stage with them. Yeah. So that was just a little bit interesting. Like, cause I honestly didn't know that was from, because I just thought like Gabba Gabba Hey was something that they came up with on their own.
Yeah.
But now that I've seen the movie Freaks, I'm like, oh, that makes sense. Now I hear the song in a completely different context. What are you fucking doing?
All right, so I just want to add to, as far as like music, paying a nod to this movie. So I'm just gonna add Marilyn Manson actually, in his album "The Golden Age of Grotesque," which came out. Oh crap! I'm not sure when that came out. I'm not sure when that came out. I'll get back to you on that. But anywho, so in this album, he has a song that's called Doll Dogga Buzz Bug Ziggity Zag. And it has a line in there that's definitely a nod to this movie, Freaks. Give me a sec. Okay, so it's a bit of a paragraph, so just give me... Don't mind. Yeah, just don't mind me like reading off this paragraph.
Listen,
all right.
We're not
so,
live. It's just you and I.
All right. So all the thug rock kids are playing. All the punk god angels sing. The toys are us and we don't even know. All the punk god angels sang. The toys are us and we don't even know. Go, 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 doppelgangers. You're one of us. You're one of us. Go, go, go. Throw your shapes, doppelgangers. You're one of us.
One of us. One of us.
Yes.
One of us.
Yes.
All
the thug puck. Wait.
Oh, you're still going.
Yeah, no. No, I scrolled down to like a few lyrics down, but I'm done.
No, keep going.
No, I'm done.
You're okay.
I'm done.
Okay.
I'm done.
Also featured the intersex Josephine Joseph, who was an actual hermaphrodite.
Exactly, but it looked like in Batman. Who's that guy?
Batman? Wait.
Like Harvey.
Oh, Two-Face.
Two-Face, yes. Thank you.
He wasn't hermaphrodite, but I get what you're saying.
No,
though.
but
so one half of his face
it was
appeared to be
exactly
of a
like
male
the
appearance.
portrayal. Yes, exactly. The
And then
portrayal was
the right half was a
exactly
female appearance.
That's what they were going for.
And they made a lot of jokes at his or her expense.
Exactly. Yes. Yes.
They were featured in that. Johnny Eck, who's a legless man. He walks around in his arms.
The handsome fella.
He is. I agreed with that historian in that documentary who said that he could have been a leading man if he didn't know that he didn't have
a lower torso. Like, no.
Yeah, you would think he looks like that, a star of the 30s, basically.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, definitely.
And then we're gonna get into my favorite character of this movie. Oh, fucking shit.
Who?
I'm so fucking drunk. The completely limbless Prince Randian.
The caterpillar, as you called him.
Yes, he's the caterpillar.
Oh my god, you're terrible.
He literally looks like a fucking caterpillar in this movie. I'm not kidding. But he's a black man. Not that that makes a difference, but he's a black guy. He looks exactly like Vic Rames, as you pointed out. Like spot on, like fucking Jules from Pulp Fiction. He looks exactly like him.
No, he did.
And yeah, he doesn't have arms, he doesn't have legs, but there's a scene in this movie where he has a matchstick in his mouth and a cigarette in his mouth. And he somehow lights the match and then uses it. He places it down on the how does he play? He places it down on the ground, kind of. And then lights the cigarette with the still lit match. And it's like, and not only that, here's the thing that depressed the shit out of me, okay?
Okay.
This guy in real life was married, and he had a son, and his son was his handler. And he lived to be about 68 years old. Can you fucking imagine going through 68 years of your life without arms, without legs, and you somehow find a woman that says like, yeah, I'll stay with you for the rest of your life
Oh my
and
God.
fuck you and have a child. Like,
I don't even want to stay with myself that long. Like,
yeah,
bless those folks.
I just,
Because I can't stand myself that much.
well, that makes one of you. I don't know. That just depressed the shit out of me when I heard that. I'm like, what am I doing wrong? I have all my limbs, and I'm just fucking up left and right. Like, this guy found a wife, and he had a kid. I don't care about having a kid. But, like, before
You can get a dog.
before I stumble into the grave and slip into the void, I would like to grab onto somebody for a moment, for just a moment while I'm here on this earth. And I can't find it. Yeah, this guy fucking finds it. I don't know.
But he doesn't even get to grab onto her. And you can't. He does, but you can't.
That's true. He doesn't know what tits feel like.
He grabs, but you can't. He somehow finds a way to grab, but you can't. That's what I'm pointing out. He finds a way to grab on, but you can't.
Yeah, true. God, he probably knows some tricks too. Imagine, like, okay, you're armless and legless, and you have to try to keep your partner attracted to you. You got to be down for some crazy shit.
That dude has a dick as opposed to the other dude.
That's right. Johnny Ack, he didn't look like he had a dick. He looked like he was cut off at the rib
No,
cage.
he has no dick.
Yeah.
No dick.
Yeah.
The other guy, he has a dick. Johnny Ack has no dick. The other
Yep.
guy has a dick.
Anyways, I just felt like mentioning that because that depressed the shit out of me.
Shit.
There's Coco the bird girl.
Coke? What? Oh, Coco. I'm sorry.
Coco the bird girl.
Oh, birds.
Who actually really didn't have any deformities. She just looked weird. And they were just like, hey, want to be a sideshow act? Because you have a long nose and, you know, you look
just
kind of like a bird.
embrace your weirdness, and she did.
She
So
did.
good for her.
Yeah. One part of this that I thought was funny was the fact that, like, during the making of this movie, they got all the quote-unquote freaks got the star treatment.
Mm-hmm.
I just picture all the pinheads like walking around with like sunglasses on and like having like getting a tan and like being amongst all the Hollywood stars of the 30s, and they have to mingle with like all of these like oddities, and like just it's such an interesting scene.
They're trying to find their way, but it's just not probably working. I don't know, only because I can imagine my awkward ass trying to mingle my way through, and it's not working because I'm so awkward.
It's okay. It's two of us. So following disastrous test screenings in January of 1932, and one woman threatened to sue MGM for claiming that the film caused her to suffer a miscarriage. Which is like, it just seems like propaganda to me. Because in the previous episode, Blue Velvet, there was a guy that claimed that he had a heart attack while he was watching the movie. But it's like, dude, you can have a heart attack anytime. Just like you could kind of have a miscarriage at any time.
Exactly.
Like, why would you blame that as... Why would you have that be the scapegoat?
And at that time, I can see how people would be like, oh my gosh, that is so aghast. Like,
Right.
that's definitely going to provoke a fucking... Oh, God, that poor baby. Oh, my goodness. Like, but nowadays,
Oh,
it's like...
boy, that poor stewed tomato that came out of her.
Oh, my God. Like, people are so fucking stupid. I can't fucking stand it. I can't fucking stand
Even
it.
back in the 30s, they were sensitive.
Fucking shit. People have always been fucking stupid. Why?
I know. But as a result, the studio cut the picture down from its original 90-minute running time to just over an hour, which is like barely a movie.
I know. It's not that much. It's like barely an episode, like, for most people nowadays. Like,
Right. Yeah.
fucking stupid, but all of that shit's gone forever. It's lost.
I know. It's so
And
sad.
that's what's sad. Yeah, like that fucking...
The ending to this movie was heavily edited, which is basically just all of the freaks attacking that woman that was using the dwarf, and they attack the man who was part of it.
Hercules.
Hercules. And there's a scene in the movie apparently where they castrate Hercules, which they cut out of the movie.
It's one of the deleted scenes.
Which will never be seen. And that part with the carnival barker in the beginning and the end of the movie, that was added in. That wasn't part of the movie. So they added that in to try to like fix it.
Makes sense.
So anyways, despite the extensive cuts, the film was negatively received by audiences and recorded a loss of $164,000. By today, that's nothing, but it remained
At that time, yeah.
yeah, but it remained a object of extreme controversy.
It was actually such controversy. It was banned in the UK for like 30 years.
That's right, and it wasn't until the late 1960s when all the hippies and counterculture people and all these sort of midnight movie showings came about that they started to embrace the movie.
Yep.
And then it was re-released. But UK, I'm going to get into like in future episodes. I think I'm actually going to do an episode about pre-code, about like how before there were films there were films made before any sort of restrictions, because I mean really that was like kind of, it's just, I love it, it's so authentic. But yeah, it was banned in the UK for 30 years.
Yep.
You are right. Browning, the director had directed Dracula right before that, which was
like a year before.
And this movie, Freaks, was so panned by audiences and critics that it pretty much drove him out of show business. He never he made a couple other movies, but they were not prominent.
Like he tried, but like after that, it was just nothing of success.
A reviewer in what's called Harrison's Reports, it's back in the day, wrote, "Anyone who considers this entertainment should be placed in a pathological ward in some hospital."
Well, that kind of sounds like, I don't know, what I wake up with in my mind every day. So, thanks.
Yeah, exactly. In the Kansas City Star, they wrote, "There is no excuse for this picture. It took a weak mind to produce it, and it takes a strong stomach to look at it."
Oh.
The Hollywood Reporter called it outrageous onslaught upon the feelings, the senses, the brains, and the stomachs of the audience. I feel like that's a bit of a hyperbole, but who knows? That was back in the 1930s. They were pretty sheltered back then.
It's a bit back then, yeah. Yeah, just a bit back then.
However, things have changed. On Rotten Tomatoes, it has a 94% rating based on 53 reviews and an average of an 8.48 out of 10. The consensus reads, "Time has been kind to this horror legend. Freaks manages to frighten, shock, and even touch the viewers in ways that contemporary viewers miss." Where does it touch you? I don't know.
I can't tell you either. I don't know. But hey, that's cool. Hey.
In 1994, Freaks was selected for preservation in the United States National Film Registry, which preserves culturally, historically, and aesthetically significant films. Quite a turnaround, I'd say. Oh, here's an interesting part.
Okay.
You'll enjoy this.
Cool.
So in 1947, MGM sold the rights to the film to a man named Dwayne Esper for $50,000. Dwayne Esper was a director and a producer. Guess what movies he was a director and a producer on?
I want to say Boogie Nights, but I don't know.
Boogie Nights, really? I'm just curious. What made you think of Boogie Nights?
I have no idea.
All right.
Okay, go ahead. What is it? What is it? What is it?
Dwayne Esper was a director and a producer of exploitation films such as Sex Maniac, Narcotic, Modern Motherhood, How to Undress in Front of Your Husband,
Okay.
The Strange Love Life of Adolf Hitler,
Oh my god.
and he produced the classic Reefer Madness.
No idea.
So he had. You don't know what Reefer Madness is?
No, actually I do. It's been around since like the 20s.
Yeah. Anyways, that's the movie Freaks. I hope this was somewhat coherent. Probably not. Anyways, final thoughts on this movie. What would you give this rating? What would you give this movie as a rating? What would you? How do you feel about it overall? Would you recommend it?
This movie overall, the rating, I would give it personally, I think on a scale of a 10, 1 to 10, of course. I think I would give it probably an 8. I would probably give it a fair 8.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would.
So it's good. Basically.
Yes. Yeah, I would. Like, given the time as well. Like,
do you think it's worth watching just because of how odd it was? Like, it's just because I don't think it necessarily is like a great movie in terms of like a story or anything like that, but it's very
if anything, I think like maybe it's like just like a really like kind of I can't think of better words other than like what I'm gonna right now, but it just in terms of like acceptance, I guess, like I don't know, just
that is one thing I'll point out about this movie is that the director of this movie really seemed to accept everybody that was involved in it.
yeah.
He didn't seem to exploit anybody that was different. He seemed to embrace them. He treated them just as regular people, and they're presented just kind of as regular people. Like even though they look odd, you don't kind of think of them as odd in a way.
And there were some scenes, like I will definitely point at, like there were some scenes like where they were kind of, I feel like maybe a little bit like not exploited, but like some things about their differences were kind of like pointed at, but it wasn't really done so like in a really negatively done way.
Right.
But still, like it just, but still nonetheless, like I think if anything, like this film just brings a lot of attention to just a lot of just differences amongst people as a whole. All right.
No, I want to say I was very pleased that you picked this movie.
Yeah.
I felt like when you picked it, I was like, of course Emily would pick this movie. It's right up her alley. It pretty much is everything she kind of embraces about life.
It's like the dark, it's the macabre, like it's, just the weirder things in life that makes it more interesting, I guess.
Well, because real life is kind of mundane. Overall,
Yeah.
in the day to day, it's pretty mundane. So when you see a movie like Freaks, it is like, oh, something different, something unusual,
Right.
something compelling, something out of the ordinary that I can sink my teeth into, and yeah. So basically, to sum up, I don't know how this is going to turn out. But thank you for coming on the podcast with me.
My awkward introverted ass came on a podcast, and this is what happened. So hey, Boom.
Well, I hope we can do more because there's,
So much more to
there's so
be
much more
weird
to
about.
discover. I mean, we're just we're hitting the tip of the iceberg with this.
Just the tip. So.
Just the tip. Just the tip. But no, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate you doing this with me.
Yep.
It means a lot. And Jesus Christ, I'm sorry I hiccuped throughout this whole fucking thing. It would not stop.
Fucking drunken, stupid
An
bastard.
hour and 15 minutes. I've been fucking hiccuping. I feel like I'm gonna hiccup for the rest of my life, like one of those people that you see. And
You will. You will.
Oh my God.
Well,
I think we should end the podcast with
right.
a good old chant of one of us.
one of us, one of us, one